not to be so great. And I found out that Prince Charming was not so charming after all. So, of course...
This is Reality Ways, and today we're stepping deep into a story that is changing more than just headlines or fan reactions. This is about identity, evolution, and the quiet kind of courage that happens when someone finally decides that their life does not have to be defined by the role the world gave them. Because right now, in the world of 1000 LB Sisters, Amy Slaton is making a move that could shift the entire future of the show. And this time, it's not about weight loss, relationships, or family arguments. It's about something more personal than almost anything we've ever seen from her. It's about expression. It's about healing. It's about a woman stepping into a version of herself that she was never allowed to become before. From the very first moment the world met Amy, there was a softness to her, a warmth, a humor that covered the pain she didn't know how to talk about. She laughed through the heaviness of her reality. Because sometimes laughter is the only thing that keeps you from falling apart. When the show started, she weighed over 400 pounds. Her world was limited. Her dreams were held hostage by her circumstances. But there was one dream inside her that never stopped breathing. The dream of becoming a mother. Amy didn't just want children because it was expected or because it looked good on camera. She wanted them because she wanted a love that was hers. A love that did not leave. A love that didn't depend on whether someone else was stable or broken. A love that came from her. And so she fought. She went through bariatric surgery. She changed her eating habits. She pushed her body and her mind into a new place. And after everything, she gave birth to 2 beautiful sons. They became her reason to keep going, her reason to try harder, her reason to show up even when she felt empty. She had achieved the thing that once felt impossible. But life doesn't reward you without also demanding something in return. The emotional weight of motherhood, public attention, and a marriage that was already cracking at the foundation was too much. The relationship that once seemed to be her safe place collapsed. Conversations turned into arguments. Silence turned into walls. And eventually, the home she once imagined would be full of laughter and stability became a place of confusion and distance. Amy became a single mother trying to find her footing while millions of people watched, commented, and made assumptions about a life they only saw pieces of. And yet, somewhere in the middle of that heartbreak, something happened that no one expected. Amy found art. Not in a big dramatic way, not in a studio or a class or a moment of revelation. It started with a small sculpture, a dinosaur made by hand, shaped with emotion more than technique. She posted it online with a simple caption, "Yes, I did that." To most people, it looked like a cute little craft. But to Amy, it was the first time in years she had created something that came entirely from her. Something that wasn't filtered through producers, expectations, or public commentary. But the internet, being what it is, reacted in the only ways it knows. How some with support, some with confusion, and many with cruelty. Comments mocked her. People laughed. People dismissed it as childish. But what they didn't understand is that art is not always about beauty. Sometimes, art is the only place a person can scream without making a sound. And Amy, for the first time in her life, had found a way to express her own voice instead of living in reaction to everyone else's needs. She kept going. She began making more pieces. Sculptures, paintings, experiments with color and shape that told stories she could not say in words. And through that process, she rediscovered parts of herself that had been buried under years of caretaking, emotional exhaustion, and survival mode. She began to find stillness. She found comfort. She found release. And then she found possibility. Amy realized that her art could be more than private healing. It could be a business, a path, a new identity that did not depend on the chaos of reality television or the emotional labor of being the supportive sister. It could be hers and only hers. And this is where the shift becomes bigger than personal discovery. Because when someone in a reality TV show finds independence, the entire show feels the impact. Reality TV thrives on conflict, on struggle, on hardship. A cast member who finds emotional balance is not always seen as an asset. they can become a narrative problem. Because what happens when the story the audience expects no longer exists? Amy is no longer the same version of herself who entered the show. The woman who once questioned her worth now stands in front of her art pieces and says, "I made this." The woman who once tried to keep the peace now protects her peace. The woman who once relied on the show to feel seen is building something that allows her to be seen without anyone else's permission. And for the producers, for the network. And for the future of 1000 LB Sisters, that shift is massive. Because if Amy's new career becomes stable, fulfilling, and successful, she may not need the show anymore. And the show, whether we admit it or not, needs her. Tammy's journey is compelling, yes. The family dynamics are dramatic, yes. But Amy is the heart. Amy is the relatable hope. Amy is the human grounding of the chaos. If she steps into a new phase of life where the pain is no longer the story, the show loses one of its emotional anchors. But for once, the question isn't what the show needs. The question is what Amy needs. And for the first time, she is choosing herself. Not in anger, not in rebellion, not in escape, but in growth. Because healing is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not happen in a single moment of clarity. It happens in every choice to keep going. Every moment you create instead of collapse. Every piece of yourself you rebuild from the ground up. And Amy Slaton, the girl who was once defined by weight, defined by caretaking, defined by being the sister in the background, is now a woman shaping her own story literally, piece by hand. Whether the show continues, changes, or ends, this part of Amy's life is only just beginning. This is Reality Ways. And the truth behind the camera is always deeper than what we see. Is always deeper than what we see.
How's a bitch get bit by a camel?
There are moments in a person's life when everything becomes quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from silence, but the kind that comes from truth. The kind that rises from the inside when a person finally stops running, stops pretending, stops performing, and simply stands in their own existence. Amy Slaton has reached that moment. And whether the world is ready for that truth is something we are about to explore together. We first met Amy in a world where her story was framed through struggle. She was introduced to the world as one half of a story too heavy for any one human to carry alone. A story built around numbers, around scales, around decisions that weren't just about weight, but about survival. She was framed as the caretaker, the emotional anchor, the sister who held everything together even when she was falling apart inside. And the cameras caught it all. Every sigh, every tear, every moment of shame and hope tangled together. But the cameras could only see what was in front of them. They could never capture the storms that lived behind her eyes. Amy grew up in a world where childhood ended early, where comfort wasn't safety, but food, where sadness wasn't acknowledged, but quieted, where responsibility wasn't earned, but forced into her hands. She learned quickly that love and burden could feel like the same thing, and she carried that into adulthood, into her marriage, into motherhood, into fame. When the world first watched her on 1000 LB Sisters, they saw a young woman desperate for a dream of holding her own child, a dream of being seen as more than her weight, a dream of becoming something other than what pain had shaped her into. And she fought for that dream. She earned surgery. She risked her life to change her body. She carried hope in her hands and refused to let go. And she got her miracle. Gage was born, and then Glenn. And for a moment, the world celebrated alongside her. But motherhood is not a fairy tale, and healing is not linear, and happiness does not erase trauma. Amy's marriage began to crack in the places she had always been afraid to look. The exhaustion grew loud. The loneliness grew heavy. And slowly, the world that celebrated her began to watch her struggle again. Not with weight this time, but with the invisible armor she wore around her life. Because when a person has been strong for too long, their strength starts to feel like a cage. There were days where Amy smiled because the cameras were on. Days where she wiped tears before the scene started. Days where she sat in the quiet of her home, surrounded by toys, laundry, and responsibilities, and wondered if she had lost herself in the very life she fought so hard to create. She loved her children more than herself, more than her breath, but love does not erase exhaustion, and exhaustion does not erase love. Both can coexist. Both did. But something unexpected began to shift. It did not start with a revelation. It did not start with a breakdown. It started with a small dinosaur statue. A simple, imperfect handmade sculpture. Clumsy, charming, a little strange, a little sweet. Something that looked like childhood and courage mixed together. Something that came from her hands, not her pain. She posted it. Quietly, no explanation. Just a moment of creation being shared. Yes, I did that. The world reacted the way the world often does. Some laughed. Some mocked. Some questioned. Some compared. They asked, "What is this? Why would she share that? Does she think it's good? Is she serious?" They didn't understand. Because it wasn't about the dinosaur. It was about the becoming. Art for Amy was not a hobby. It was a door. A door into a room of herself she had forgotten existed. A room where she was not a caretaker, not a sister, not a mother, not a reality star, not a number on a scale. In this room, she was simply Amy, the girl who once drew on notebook pages to escape the world around her. The girl who made things because making things helped her breathe. The girl who had always been creative, even if no one had noticed. Making art wasn't about talent. It was about oxygen. So she kept making. She painted. She sculpted. She poured resin. She experimented with color. She created messy, emotional, honest things. She created things that didn't need to be understood by anyone else. But then something even deeper happened. She created a piece for her cousin, Katie. A gift of love, not just because they were family, but because Katie was fighting for her life. Stage 4 cancer. Reality stopped being entertainment. Pain became real. The family gathered. They held each other. They cried in private where cameras cannot follow. And Amy did what she has always done. She loved. But this time, instead of carrying the pain in silence, she poured it into art. Her hands remembered what her heart had forgotten. Creation is healing. This was the moment art became her lifeline. And then she made a sale. $20. Some would laugh. Some did. But the look on her face, the smile that opened like morning sunlight, showed the truth. That $20 wasn't income. It was validation. Proof that something she made from her own heart could exist outside of her pain. Proof that she could create something valuable simply by being herself. And this is where the story begins to change. Because when a woman learns her value is not tied to suffering, the world around her starts to tremble. For the show, Amy's pain was part of the narrative. Her stress was a storyline. Her exhaustion was compelling television. Her breakdowns created episode arcs. Her tears kept viewers watching. The network understood this. The producers understood this, and in ways she never wanted to admit. Amy understood this too, but art. Art does not ask her to struggle. Art does not require chaos. Art does not demand breakdowns. Art does not script her sadness. Art asks only that she'll show up as she is. This is where the conflict forms. The conflict that could end the show. Because if Amy finds peace, the show loses a pillar of its emotional architecture. The producers know. TLC knows. The audience, even if they don't have words for it, feels the shift. Amy is no longer standing in the same place she once was. She has walked through heartbreak. She has survived public embarrassment. She has made mistakes and been judged for them. She has been arrested. She has been forgiven. She has lost. She has rebuilt. She has fallen apart. She has stood back up. And now she is choosing herself. That is not a small choice. That is a revolution. She is eating differently, not because cameras are watching, but because she is watching herself. She is parenting differently, not to prove something, but because she loves deeply. She is healing the emotional eating patterns that began in childhood when grief and hunger felt the same. She is speaking to her boys with a tenderness she once had to grow for herself. She is becoming the woman she once needed. And healing always has consequences. When a person stops being the broken character everyone is used to, they become harder to control, harder to define, harder to place into a narrative frame. Amy is stepping out of the frame. And here is the truth, the quiet, undeniable truth that cannot be avoided. If Amy's art career continues to grow, if her store launches, if her pieces begin to sell, if her confidence continues to bloom, she realizes she does not need the show to survive. She may walk away, not out of anger, not out of rebellion, not out of betrayal, but out of healing. And healing does not always make for good television. Tammy's story is changing too. She is living, loving, growing, healing. The sisters have entered new identities. And the show that once documented transformation must now face the reality that the transformation is happening off camera. So the audience watches. The producers wait. The family shifts. And Amy stands at the crossroads of two worlds. One where she remains the character built from her wounds. And one where she becomes the woman built from her art. She cannot be both. And she knows this. You can feel it in the way she speaks now. Slower, softer, more sure. You can see it in the way she looks at her creations. You can hear it in the small pauses before she answers questions. Healing is in the pauses. Healing is in the stillness. Amy does not want to be tragic anymore. She wants to be whole, and wholeness is the end of the story that television has been telling about her. So the question is not whether the show will continue. The question is whether Amy will choose her peace over her paycheck. And if she does, the show will lose its heart. But maybe it is time for the world to learn something. People are not stories. People are not characters. People are not spectacles. People are not entertainment. People are human. Amy is human. And she is reclaiming her humanity one brush stroke at a time. This is not the fall of Amy Slaton. This is the rise. You are watching the beginning of a woman returning to herself. And that is a story bigger than any show could ever contain. And that is a story bigger than any show could ever contain.
I'm asleep. I can't control it.
There are moments in life when a person looks at themselves and realizes that change has already begun long before they consciously knew it. Amy Slaton is living in one of those moments. A woman who once believed her story would always be shaped by her weight, by her struggles, by her trauma, is now discovering that she has a life beyond the narrative the world attached to her. And sometimes new chapters begin quietly, like a simple meal shared online. A bowl of grilled salmon and roasted vegetables placed carefully in front of her, not for applause, not for validation, but to prove to herself that she is different now. That she has grown. After undergoing weight loss surgery, Amy didn't just change her diet. She changed the way she looked at food entirely. Food had once been comfort, distraction, noise. Food had been survival. But now, it is nourishment, sustenance, fuel. She chooses smaller portions, fewer carbs, more vegetables. She has even begun growing her own produced cauliflower, asparagus, Brussels sprouts. And the most unexpected joy of all is watching her sons enjoy the food she once never imagined she would learn to love. There is something powerful in that. Generational habits breaking in real time. Cycles being undone in the kitchen instead of in therapy rooms or written in journals. And for Amy, sharing these meals online is not about showing off. It is accountability. It is community. It is vulnerability. She allows people to see her plate before she allows them to see her pain. Because there is a safety in food photos that emotions don't offer. And yet the emotional truth is right there beneath the surface. She is trying. She is learning. She is evolving. When she revisited the junkyard with Tammy, place etched into the earliest memory of the show, the weight loss journey came full circle. The industrial scale that once marked humiliation now marked victory. 249 pounds. A number that represented not just loss, but survival. 157 pounds gone. And yet, Amy didn't stand there triumphant for the cameras. She simply breathed. Because progress does not always look like celebration. Sometimes looks like quiet acceptance. But every transformation story eventually leads to the skin. The remnants of who she once was. Skin that carries memory. Skin that drapes and falls and reminds her of the weight she once believed she could never shed. Amy wants skin removal surgery. Not for beauty, not for aesthetics, but for closure. For freedom, for movement, for the ability to feel at home inside her own body for the first time. Season 8 of the show may capture that journey. Or it may become something Amy chooses to keep for herself. Healing does not always need an audience. But life, of course, is never just about one transformation. It branches, it twists, expands into relationships, identity, and belonging. And Amy found herself in the middle of another transformation when she met Brian. After her divorce from Michael Halterman, a marriage marked by emotional cracks and quiet exhaustion, and did not rush into love, at least not knowingly. She was simply looking for connection. But sometimes connection arrives fast, like lightning. Brian entered her life with warmth, humor, patience, and Amy. Weary from loneliness, allowed herself to feel something again. It took only 4 months for him to propose, and she said yes. The world had opinions. Her family, especially Tammy, worried she was moving too fast. Her mother questioned whether love built quickly could survive life's harder seasons. Some fans believed Brian wanted the spotlight, the attention, the convenience of being with someone already accustomed to supporting others. Others believed he truly loved her. The truth is rarely found in public opinion. The truth lives quietly in how two people hold each other when no one is watching. Amy and Brian celebrated their first anniversary at Discovery Park of America, both smiling, both leaning in close, both looking like they were choosing each other, not out of fear, not out of loneliness, but out of genuine affection. Amy posted the photo and the comments flooded in. If he makes you happy, that's all that matters. Y'all are perfect together. Support replaced skepticism. Love replaced doubt. And there, in that moment, Amy began to imagine a life with Brian. A wedding, a home, a future. A Halloween ceremony, because love doesn't need to follow tradition to be real. But love brings choices, and Amy made hers. She took Brian's last name. Not legally yet, not on official documents, but in spirit, in intention. Okay. In how she signed her artwork, Amy Levern Creations. Her art, her healing, her rebirth. But new beginnings rarely unfold without cracks. Amy and Brian moved in together. And the home they chose became the center of online criticism. Tammy visited and was unimpressed. Viewers commented, fans fixated on the details, the floors, the clutter, the pool, the mess. People began to ask whether Amy had rushed again, whether she was compromising her children's environment for companionship, whether Brian was contributing enough, whether Amy was repeating patterns she had just escaped. The photos of Amy sitting on the floor with her meal sparked new conversations. Was she unable to afford furniture? Was she choosing chaos over stability? Or was it simply a moment taken out of context? A single angle misunderstood? Social media never sees the full house. It sees one snapshot and calls it truth. Amy did not defend herself aggressively. She simply kept living. Then came the pool. The pool became a symbol of everything people feared for her. Cloudy water, algae, effort without guidance, trying without understanding. Amy posted that she got a new vacuum to fix it. She was proud of the improvement, but the internet saw only the problem. They said, shock the water, treat the algae. Clean doesn't equal sanitized. The comments weren't just about the pool. They were about her capability, her judgment, her choices as a mother, as a partner, as a woman rebuilding her life. Criticism has always followed Amy. It followed her weight. It followed her parenting. It followed her art. It followed her love. But there is something different now. She no longer absorbs it the same way. She hears it, yes, but she does not live in it. She does not collapse beneath it. She does not apologize for existing. Because Amy has survived too much to be undone by judgment. She survived childhood trauma. She survived public humiliation. She survived dangerous pregnancies. She survived heartbreak. She survived internet scrutiny. She survived being the caretaker when she was the one who needed care. She is not weak. She is not falling. She is evolving. Amy's story is no longer about weight. It is about identity, self-worth, courage, renewal. Yes, her home needs work. Yes, her relationship is young. Yes, her finances are rebuilding. Yes, her future is uncertain. But growth is often messy. Healing is rarely graceful. Reinvention does not come with clean edges. Amy is building a life, not a performance. She is learning how to love again. She is learning how to trust again. She is learning how to create again. She is learning how to mother with joy instead of fear. This is not the downfall of Amy Slaton, no matter how loudly critics want it to be. This is the slow, imperfect, deeply human rise of a woman who refuses to give up on herself. And whether this becomes the storyline of season 8 or the beginning of a life lived, off camera, one truth stands unshakable. Amy is no longer living for survival. She is living for herself. This is her transformation. Her reclaiming, her becoming. You are watching a woman step into her own voice.